overall, what this says is the labour market is a picture of health right now. Very good numbers on wages, on payroll growth, and really no reason for interest rates to be as low as they are.
A picture of health, Joe. You were getting a little worried about this economy. You weren't too optimistic lately. Does this change your view at all?
No, not really. I mean, the job numbers are excellent, no question. GDP has been weak. Unemployment hasn't moved for 10 months, where GDP has grown 1% over that time. The data today suggests we're still probably growing something this quarter. So the strong employment numbers mean is productivity is very soft, and therefore corporate profit margins are under further pressure. So this is not a long-term sustainable phenomenon.
Hi there. Thought my mic was on for a second. There you go. Now I can speak. Makes no difference who is in charge. The current presidential administration will always ballyhoo positive news. They will bury the details. Expecting anything less is folly and would indicate a desire to neither know nor speak the truth. It's the way of things. It will never change. Thus, we have the Obama administration marking a little over 250,000 jobs being added to the American workforce in July. Wonderful. Good news. Welcome news. Reality now. Those numbers are down slightly from the month prior. Unemployment is still hovering just under 5%, and there are still a lot of people looking for work. But all it begs is the same question few are willing to really dig into. Where are all these new jobs supposed to come from? How can they show up in time to save these people who are still looking? And knowing the snail's pace it takes to get anything done in Washington, why are we supposed to believe that this economic picture will get much better in 10 years, much less 10 months? One man can properly deliver the economic goods in this case. He will do so. You can comment if you'd like. 1-877-Newsmax. Pleasure to welcome back the veteran economist, host of the Steve Beaman Show at 560 The Answer in Chicago, author of The American Dream Under Fire. I mentioned his name. You know it already. Steve Beaman. Good to see you again, Steve. Thanks for joining us. Let's go ahead and get to work, my friend, because here we just heard that. You heard two entirely different ideas of what we just heard. CNBC, the folks out there who are trumpeting this, monster job numbers, blew away analysts' expectations. Everything rose. Business got more jobs. Healthcare got more jobs. 18,000 more roles in the basically Wall Street jobs are even up. Okay, now give us the reality.
Another $180 billion in free capital to drive it. So what can you say?
But now give us the reality. Let's look at it from one side, okay? The numbers to some people look really good, look like we're on the right track. Do you see them being as rosy as some people paint them?
Clearly not. I see them as good news. I'd rather have good job numbers rather than bad ones, and I think this was a positive surprise. But it is, as I said, a function of a number of things, and part of that is more stimulation from the Japanese central bank, $180 billion worth. We've got an economy around the world that is struggling to grow. And, productivity is not moving up as fast as we'd like. And so I think what we beg to see here on asset values in the market for CNBC standpoint, the market reacted very nicely in the near term. But if the Fed raises rates in their September meeting, you could see that turn around in a flash.
Let's talk about, you use the phrase struggling to grow, and I think that's a great place to start. Because let's face it, we have an American economy works one way. We have a Chinese economy, a Japanese economy. We have a global economy right now. Is it not just possible that while we are trying so hard to get things done here in America, that the way things have shaped around the world, that we simply can't move forward as forcefully as we want to, with as many jobs, putting as much money into it, and creating more work than we would like to? It's just not physically possible.
Ed, I've spoken with you a lot that we are now moving into a 21st century economy that's beginning to look nothing like the 20th century economy. I'm not sure where all this stimulus money is coming from and how we end up resolving all that. And clearly the productivity levels we're achieving around the world, as well as the debts and deficits being accrued by the Chinese, the Russians, the Europeans, and the United States, this does not portend well for long-term growth. But who knows, maybe my crystal ball's too historically based and doesn't hold true anymore.
No, but it's possible what you're just saying here. Is it just possible that a lot of people are basing this on what you talked about, a 20th century economy? This is the 21st century. It's 2016. We're not even close to what that was. And we have to start looking at things differently instead of just looking at raw numbers such as these and all of a sudden ballyhooing them as being wonderful.
I think we do. We need to be cautious that we don't get overly optimistic about old-fashioned data. We know the employment numbers are gamed. The labor participation rate holds in the 60 percentile ranges. the nature of jobs and employment, especially in the middle class, are transitioning from an industrial base to a technology base. And as that happens, we're going to see, I think, increased unemployment in the middle class. There's no way around it. And I think it begs to be seen how that grows throughout the economic processes around the world. I'm not sure yet.
Where do we find the jobs, Steve? I mentioned that this new job report talks about healthcare industry jobs, Wall Street industry jobs, and others. I asked this today around the office, and one word came up: infrastructure. I said, look, okay, great. It'd be great to put people to work in the infrastructure to fix it, but where are you going to find the money for it? You've got to find a certain type of person. So we're still at that point. Where are these jobs going to come from?
Well, I do think we're seeing a lot of growth in finance because Wall Street's doing very well in this environment. I think the government sector, even though it's slowed its growth, has continued to do well. Healthcare is tied to that. But I think long term, what we really need to do is focus on educating people on the new realities of technology and creating value propositions that allow people to work with technology and become masters of that technology. I've talked about trade schools and alternative forms of education because, Ed, we better start changing the way we look at it, or these, again, 20th century education establishments are going to blow up in the 21st century.
Isn't that what you just said here? Because I mentioned infrastructure and I mentioned construction jobs. Look, these are jobs that are necessary to have in this economy. These are men and women who go out there and they bust their backs every single day to go ahead and build the infrastructure, build the houses, build the roads. But there are other jobs. It's a different changing economy. It's a different world. You can't fall back on those jobs like we used to 30 years ago.
No, and Ed, that's one of my big disputes with the Trump campaign. And we've talked a little bit about this. I don't want to jump into politics, but he's so quick to say, I'm going to bring these jobs back from China. It is entirely possible through trade negotiation, you could bring production back to the United States. But I would challenge as to whether or not there are going to be any jobs with it. We are now seeing automated production in everything from food processing to driving to transportation up into manufacturing. And those production facilities may come back, but the jobs aren't coming with them. And I think people need to be aware that the economy is changing. You must become educated on how to work with technologies like you're saying. Be that person who knows how to work with infrastructure in a legitimate value way. And then we need to clean up government so they can actually smartly fund these things instead of squandering the money.
Oh, now we're talking about smart government. You better stop right there, young man, because you're in big trouble. Let me grab a couple of phone calls in here, get some comments. Mike is in Fresno, California. Mike, you believe that Donald Trump will be great for the economy. We get it. Okay, 30 seconds. Tell us why.
Okay, first of all, I agree with Steve. Some of the stuff he said. I'm a nurse. In the last 8 years, this has been the worst 8 years of my life. A lot of the services are being bidded on by companies that go for the lowest bidder. The county hires facilities, and we need to get corporations that are owned by the facility here. And as he said, we need to renew our strength in our education and
Then why will Donald Trump? You got to get to the point. Why will Donald Trump be great for the economy specifically?
Okay, specifically 2 points. I think he will bring factories back across the border, and number two, he won't send billions of dollars overseas to our enemies.
Okay, good. Got both points. Thank you very much. Another one quick. Jacob is in Ohio. Jacob, you also believe Donald Trump will be great for the economy. Please stay on point. Give me 30 seconds and tell us specifically why.
Well, thank you, Ed, for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I think if they close the border, that would help a lot. But I think the biggest thing is lowering the tax rate for big business from what it is now down to 15, 16%. I think that would bring jobs back.
Okay, I'm going to take that because I've only got a short time left. Thanks for the call. Steve, now we talked about lowering taxes. There's been a couple of studies that have looked at Hillary Clinton's tax plans, and they have found out that there's absolutely no way that this thing can survive on the amount of money that she's calling for here. They are going to once again tax Americans to death. Here's a simple question, Steve. 45 seconds. Can we grow the economy without taxing the middle class, but taxing Americans into oblivion?
I think the answer is yes, Ed. I'm actually an optimist about it. Now, whether or not the two candidates will do what they need to do, I don't know. But if we do reduce taxes at the corporate level and the very high end to give that stimulus, if we reduce the regulatory burden on the American industry sector that's causing it to move overseas, we could see growth rates back in the 4 and 5 and 6% range. And that will go a long way to fixing the financial problems we've got. These folks that are calling in, I understand why they're supporting Trump. They're sick and tired of Washington throwing out wasted money to foreign governments,
Me too.
bad trade programs. But by the same token, I think they need to be careful because Trump's trade programs, if he inputs tariffs on what we're trying to do, that's a 1930s solution, and it didn't work then, it won't work now, and a lowering tide will lower all boats.
And you folks can hear a lot more about this. The Steve Beaman Show is every Saturday evening at 8 p.m. Central Time on 560 WIND, The Answer in Chicago. Also listen around the world. Get more of this. You go to stevebeamanshow.com, and that's where you get it. Don't worry, my friends. Sooner or later, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take care of all the ills of the world right here. We'll do it on a daily basis. Steve, always a pleasure, buddy. Best of the family. Take care. All right, from the power of money to horsepower, and what I believe is the greatest American sports car in history, okay, that has now gone electric. We'll do that with the car coach, Lauren Fix, when we come back on The Hardline.